here, what to do to increase reading skill. Reading skill is again two aspects. One is your speed in reading, and second aspect is your comprehension capability or your understanding capability, right? These two factors determine how well you do your reading, and that has a bearing on, earlier I would say only English section and legal section, but today I would say all areas. That is where the thing is. So focus every day, spend time on reading, read books, read any articles on the internet, read news articles, editorials, all these things. But do reading, read. If you do this reading, then what happens is every day, let's say you spend a couple of hours on reading, especially those of you who have having a problem with the reading skill. You spend a few 1 or 2 hours on every day on reading. Then what happens over a period of time? You become fast at reading. You've come across a lot of words, vocabulary. So the vocabulary is not new to you. What hampers your speed in reading? One, the topic is new. Two, the words are unfamiliar. That is when because none of these passages that you will come across are such a complex subject that you cannot understand. It is not about that. So when does the reading become difficult? The words are new, the topics are unfamiliar. Now, how do you handle this? The topics unfamiliar, that will go away when you've been reading the news on a regular basis and you go through some legal websites and you look at, say, Bar and Bench or a Live Law, or those kind of sites where you're reading different passages and articles that you read. So then you're familiar with those topics. Then what happens is when you come across such a passage in the exam, it becomes easy to read. Your reading is smooth. The second thing that is about vocabulary. Now, how that vocabulary also improves is as and when you read more passages, you read good quality articles, like you read your Hindu editorials or opinion articles or any other magazine, good quality articles. When you read and you've been coming across good vocabulary, first time it is strange. You might not know what it is, but read the same thing 2 or 3 times, you come across that same word, you automatically registers in your mind. You don't stop to think what it is. So the only way your reading speed increases and your comfort increases is you're reading more and more. So today, those of you are having difficulty in reading, I would say spend 2 or 3 hours read something, and that is your CLAT preparation. Yes, Naresh, you can add.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, I'm just back and I've been listening to what Padma is saying, and I've seen a lot of students are asking questions specifically in reading. Yeah. I can see all the questions fall into 3 categories, right? 3 specific areas. Some of you say you're not good at vocabulary. How can I improve my vocabulary? That's the first concern that I see many of you are having. Second is some of you do not have enough reading speed, that time is not enough for you. And the third thing that I see people say is when I'm reading fast, I'm not able to remember stuff. I'm not able to comprehend it better. I'm not able to retain it better. If I see these are the 3 broad kind of issues that you have with reading, that is what all our student friends are saying here. Let's kind of address these 3 in specific, Padma, so that then we'll go ahead and kind of talk more. So if I kind of take the first issue, right, like Padma has elaborated on it already, in the sense that reading is a skill that cannot be, like, you cannot get it in a day or a 2 or a month or so. It's a lifelong skill. I'll give my own example. Okay, believe me, when I was in 11th and 12th your age, I probably did not have good English, I mean good reading speed, etc., etc. But one thing I can always say, even though I did not come from international and corporate schooling, etc., I always had town schooling. But what I had was, I had always had interest, penchant for reading lots of books outside my school studies. In spite of that, I was still not great at your age. Once I entered graduation, what happened is I got a chance to actually elaborate on my hobby. My hobby was reading, right? I kind of got into reading. I would have probably read 100, 120 books in the first couple of years of my graduation. That changed my life entirely, because at that time I was reading fiction, non-fiction. In fact, you'd be surprised, I started with some very, Jeffrey Archer, those kind of books that I love a lot. In fact, by the time I came to my final year of engineering, I started reading Jean-Paul Sartre, the people kind of philosophy of Sartre. So what I'm only trying to say is I graduated from Ayn Rand, Jeffrey Archer to Ayn Rand to Jean-Paul Sartre. So why I'm saying this, friends, is reading is not a thing that you can get in a month or 2. So we have been preparing for CLAT for last 1-2 months. We have been focusing on what will be asked, how will be asked, how to handle that. But the basic reading foundation needs to come to you in the long term. And let me tell you, that does not mean you should be disappointed. I don't want any of you to be disappointed. Now that you know there are three specific areas we're targeting: vocabulary, actual reading speed, and finally comprehension and retention. Let's ask what can we do in both short term and long run with respect to these things. We'll kind of look at it that way. Let's look at vocabulary part. If you have to kind of do something in the short term to kind of do what can you do about vocabulary? Say CLAT is going to happen next month. You cannot obviously go ahead and get all the Oxford Dictionary words in your mind. Is it possible? It's not possible. So what is the right thing for you to do is focus more on contextual vocabulary. That is, never ever, one important tip I want to give all of you, those who are very advanced readers and those who are just basic readers also, this will work both for both of you. Never ever, when you're reading in the context of improving your reading, never get stuck with the meaning of a word and find out. Don't do that. In the middle of the reading, whenever you contextualize, guess, predict, estimate the meaning and move on. Never waste your time in referring to a dictionary. Never do that, because that will put a huge bottleneck on your reading. You might go wrong. Let me tell you, when you kind of guess the meaning of a word that you don't know for the first time, you might go wrong. That's absolutely okay. But the idea is to kind of say you get used to new words without actually referring to a dictionary, wasting a time. Believe me, it will give you a lot of speed. It's a short term. In the long run, how do you do that? In the long run, what you can do is adding to this strategy of contextual vocabulary. I'm sure you would have learned a lot about root words, prefixes, suffixes, word clouds, lot of these things what we would have said. That is a great thing for you to do. In fact, as part of the LawPrep 2-year program, we focus a lot on word power, maybe Norman Lewis word power. That is a longer term thing to do. At least in the short term, I would want all of you to kind of contextualize your vocabulary, focus on the word, do not worry about the exact meaning, focus on a contextual meaning. That's the first tip I would give you in the short term and the long term. Is there anything you want to add in the vocabulary part, Padma? I mean, did I cover both so that I can go out of it?
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. So coming to the second thing that we said, actual reading speed, right? A lot of you say about reading speed. You know why many of you find it very difficult to have good reading speed? Time problem. Let me tell you, that is not because of actual reading. You all are capable of reading English. That's not at all a problem. You might find new words. We discuss how to do, sometimes even the pronunciation. You know, a lot of you are very worried about having when you see a new word, some of you are worried about meaning, but there are some of you who are worried about pronunciation also. I go wrong in pronunciation left, right, and center. That does not stop me from being a sought out speaker anywhere. I don't care. The accent is not important. In fact, there's a very interesting thing I keep reading. When someone actually mispronounces a word, that actually means they've learned the word reading it, not hearing it. When you hear a word for the first time, you learn the pronunciation properly. So nothing wrong about knowing the pronunciation, knowing the new meaning, etc. Important thing for you to improve your reading speed again in the short term is, again I'm telling you, in the short term is practice eclectic reading in a short span. Like Padma said, spend 2 to 3 hours every day. Now you're all focused only on CLAT. Believe me, you have to spend 2 to 3 hours every day reading apart from your CLAT syllabus. It could be anything. Again, I said the word I used is eclectic. What did I mean by eclectic reading? I'm saying diverse reading. For example, in the 3 hours that you keep yourself for reading something in the day, apart from your CLAT books, etc., you kind of want to read, say, one philosophy book or one philosophy passage, one philosophy article, one sports article, one science article, one humor article. It doesn't matter. I think you need to train your mind to read eclectically, and the best exercise you can give your mind right now in reading is do eclectic reading 2 to 3 hours a day right now in the short term. This is the reading speed mantra in the short term. Coming to longer term, the best way to kind of longer term improvement. I'm speaking both, friends, because I believe it's not only about CLAT. Even when you get into law school, your success depends a lot on how well you read. I think the best way to do it is this eclectic reading habit has to be made your lifestyle. You have to kind of have you see a lot of your friends. Some of your friends might be great at one subject, but they might not be great at other things. An all-rounder is what will do well in life. Reading, you have eclectic reading. Now, short burst, intense sprint burst that we're discussing, make it a marathon in the long run. That is about reading speed. Coming to the last area, the third area I said about reading is basically reading comprehension and retaining the facts, retaining the data, retaining the logic. Let me tell you, the third area is a byproduct of area 1 and 2. You have the right vocabulary, you have the right reading speed, your accuracy, your retaining and comprehension will come. If you focus on the third area, your 1 and 2 are gone. All those who are worried about I'm not comprehending well enough, all those who are worried about I'm making I'm not retaining enough, it's absolutely okay. This is pretty okay. That only indicates that you're probably an early reader. It's important for you to kind of graduate from stage 1 to stage 2, vocabulary, contextualizing it, reading speed, eclectical, and believe me, comprehension will happen over time. For example, let me tell you, when someone actually tries to learn cricket, in the beginning, when they're trying to play cricket shots, if they only kind of, if they have to say, I have to get every shot correct, it's not possible. In the beginning, what and they start practicing, and over time they ace the shots, whichever speed you're trying to say. So I don't want any of you, any of my students, to worry about comprehension beginning. Comprehension will come as a byproduct. Do not worry about comprehension. So overall, to summarize what we have just said, both Padma and I said, we have been elaborating along on it, but to summarize quickly, two things that you can do in short term is never ever worry about vocabulary, focus on contextualizing the vocabulary and move on it. Number two, focus on eclectic, intense, short sprint reading. That is 3 hours a day, 3 different subjects. Do not read one kind of book. A lot of you have a habit of saying, I read a lot of books, sir. You read one novel, that's not going to work. I'm saying the same day, spend 1 hour on reading a fiction, spend 1 hour on reading some science, intense science, spend 1 hour on reading your legal, some judgment, something like that. Bar and bench, live law, a lot of these things, right? So that's a broad way of improving your eclectic reading. This is what I would want to say in the short term. In the long run, take these two things and make them the part of life. That is improving your vocabulary to word clouds, suffixes, prefixes, root words, and all etymology and stuff. And the second thing is reading eclectically should become part of your life. I hope I've answered